for joining us today. Well, I've got my 17-year-old daughter, Laila, who's decided to sit down with me and have a chat on the podcast. It's her first podcast, but I thought I'd sit down with you and have a chat and we can discuss what you've been doing, because I know that you've reignited your faith. Tell me more about that.
I've kind of gotten back into it. I feel like I first kind of had my own discovery with religion when probably about 3-4 years back, but
Yeah.
I never was really, what's the word? I can't find the word.
Invested.
Yeah, I guess it was just something to hold on to, like something that everyone has, something that that's bigger than them, and for me that was religion and that was God, but I never really was very consistent with it. But I feel like it's helped me through a lot of, I would say, things that I've dealt with within myself and with being a kid, like feeling like I didn't really have something to grasp onto, if that makes sense. It's kind of hard to explain, and it's hard to explain to people who may not have a faith or
No, I think it makes sense. I think, like, for me with the I Alpha project, what I'm trying to do is get people to be aware of themselves. And like, we had a very similar discussion, which is why I thought this would be cool, is we spoke about God being in you and finding God, and have you allowed Jesus into your heart, that type of thing when people say that. Now, I don't want to focus mostly on Catholic or Christianity or any particular religion, but I do want to focus on what you just said, which is about finding a connection to yourself with whatever your faith is. And I think sometimes the exploration of faith is in part a big step into the exploration of yourself.
Yeah, I agree.
What in the last 4 months attributed or inspired you or motivated you to pursue your faith further?
I feel like relationships and things happen to you in life, and you can go through a lot, and it's really easy to point fingers and say that certain people are the reason why this has happened to you, and how you kind of have a victim mentality of how you can go about these situations. And I feel like religion for me, and just by reading and actually taking on what the Bible is telling me and realizing that the world isn't against me, like stuff that happens to me isn't because I'm a victim, it's because it's just how it was meant to happen, and it's up to me to decide how I deal with those situations, not only through myself but through the way God intended us to, and through the way God allowed Jesus to on earth. That's how I take it in a religious perspective. On a more of like a higher self perspective, it's helped me a lot to kind of have a calmer mind and calm body, and just realize that it's okay to let things happen to you and to become better from those situations without reacting off ego and off emotions rather than common sense and higher self.
Yes, I agree with that completely. And so would you say that in pursuing your faith, you have to release the ego?
Yeah, you would.
You would, absolutely, right? Like you'd almost have to let go. When people say ego, they think it's like an attitude thing, like wanting to be cool. But ego is something that we all have, but it's a psychological basis on how we perceive ourselves. The ego, how we see ourselves, how we want others to see us, and that comes with a certain amount of arrogance and victim mentality and attention seeking and wanting to be belong, etc., etc. But no matter what, just because you pursue your faith doesn't mean ego doesn't get involved, because when we pursue our faith, there is a sense of empowerment, is there not?
There is.
So have you ever had the experience where people feel somewhat more empowered through their faith, and in doing that, their ego reappears?
I have seen, yeah. It has happened.
So give me an example of that.
I feel like it's, how do I explain this? Lots of people online, I feel like it's, if we want to go for answers, it's really quick. You want to search something up, you can search it up online. If you want answers to a question in the Bible, search it up online, they'll give it to you. You'll come across a lot of speakers, priests, and people like that who will have a sense of an ego in the church, and it's like pretty common nowadays, especially with people trying to build up online and trying to get a social following, and it's really common, and it's
It's very hard to do that without your ego in tow some way, correct? Yeah, which it makes it like I do know, like I think anyone pursuing a faith is a really big thing. And for me, it's God as well. But I have a different process to this. Like the way that I see it personally is when people say, have you let Jesus into your life? Have you let God, or whatever your faith is? I I believe that for me, at least, God is in all of us, whether we choose it or not. We are all His children. So it doesn't matter what your God is to you, but that's the purpose. So in pursuing my higher self, that is pursuing the creation of the Lord. It's like the more I understand who I am and how God made me, is getting closer to God. But to do that without the ego. So when I look at religion, it's now not about finding God and living life the way that He sees fit. It's becoming who I am and living life the way that I am and see fit. Now, it's not my cognitive mind or my ego portraying, it's my connection to God, if that makes sense. So before religion, for example, did you know the difference between right and wrong?
I did, yeah.
Okay, so now that you found religion, why are you more motivated to do something for the Lord than you are to do something for yourself?
For me, it's not necessarily like, how do I explain this? That's a good question. What does it say?
So why would you be more willing to do something because it's what God would like as opposed to it's what you would like?
For me, I feel like it's a bit of both. I find more peace within myself when I kind of do stuff
that is in alignment with what the Lord would like,
exactly,
and expect.
And that in itself is enough to know that me living this way is bringing me enough peace. Then why wouldn't I continue to do so?
Absolutely, absolutely. But then doesn't that show you that the more you work at your own peace, the closer you get to God?
Yeah, 100%.
So it's not just exclusive, right? Because so many times I find with faith, the biggest risk is when this is no judgment to anyone and everyone's journey, and I believe any work is to be commended. But sometimes in pursuing a certain faith, I've been exposed with my surgery and my condition to a lot of people that have been blessed that have prayed for me and wanted to support me. And I've gone to various churches, and like you said, I've had various experiences. Some were very uplifting and connection, and I felt a certain presence with God. Others I felt further away from God than I've ever had. And I think that the biggest thing is that maintaining the how can I put this? Religion and faith can often give people a sense of virtuosity as well as comfort a certain amount of fear that they themselves can't find within themselves, the strength to overcome that fear. It's kind of like I'm so fixated on my religion from a place of fear as opposed from a place of awareness and love.
Yeah, I got you.
When people get sick, their faith gets strong really quick. Right? It's from the fear. And then it's the same thing when a family member gets sick, then we can find our faith really, really strong. And what I mean by that is like for you in finding your faith and reconnecting to that part of you, have you been aware of circumstances of when sometimes your faith is serving more of an escape than a reality check? Do you know what I mean by that?
An escape in what, like...
Like, for example, sometimes to face the realities of the world, we look to our faith to fix our problems, as opposed to looking to our faith for the strength for us to fix our own problems.
I would say for me, I will always look to my faith to help give me wisdom on how to deal with certain situations. I feel like I try personally to limit the factor of, this has happened to me, God, remove it from my life. Oh God, I don't want anything to do with this, you deal with it. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I try not to live in that kind of mindset. I would rather pray on it and actually ask for God to reroute, like help me see what it is that is making me feel this way, or help me see what it is that can help me move through these things. I feel like if you aren't doing that, then you aren't really moving through a situation.
Exactly.
So you're in the same place you were the first time.
Very true. Very true. So, like, with in the surgery and that, I remember Vova Lurch used to always tell me, oh, God will clear you, God will be fine. But she never liked it when I used to say, God allowed this to happen. She never liked that. She was always kind of triggered by that. And she said, you don't have faith, you need faith. I says, no, I've got faith. That's my faith. My faith is in, if God didn't want this to happen, it wouldn't have happened. It's not up to God to fix it. And like one of the podcasts I just did recently, they were talking about this, and I was like, I don't think this happened because God wanted to punish me or teach me something. This happened because I asked God to make me better.
Exactly.
And sometimes when we want to grow and we're looking for that personal growth within ourselves, God presents situations and opportunities for us to grow and develop from them. And He often doesn't leave us by ourselves. He's always with us, but it's up to us to navigate that through our own understanding.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think sometimes with young people, when they start in their faith, I see a very balanced approach sometimes at the start, but then I also see people go so quickly in with blinkers that they lose themselves in their faith. Now, this is just my perspective, and this is not a very generalized comment, but it's almost like a marriage, or being a parent, is where you lose yourself to being a father or a mother, or you lose yourself to being a husband or a wife. So we lose our sense of identity, and we only see ourselves as that thing. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a son, or I'm a believer. And I think when you're pursuing your faith, don't lose yourself in the process. Become more aware of who you are, because that is the closer you will get to God. Does that make sense? And doing that without ego. So understanding that, like even Jesus said, you can do what I do if you believe as much as I believe. And I think that's where my faith comes in, is like, I believe I can heal my health. I can make changes and manifest, but I don't believe I have magic powers. I believe I have enough faith through emotion and brainwaves and manifestation and meditation to use God's energy, or to I wouldn't say use is the wrong word, apply God's energy through my behavior and my belief systems and the goodness I put in order to manifest what I want. Which brings me to the question when you spoke about you pray. What's the difference between praying and meditating?
I have discussed this before. If you really look at it, there is not much difference.
I would agree.
I feel as though, for me, meditation is something that you do to connect to your higher self, and it's grounding, and it's a way to get into a good headspace, I guess. Yeah. Prayer, for me, does a very similar thing, except I feel as though I'm in the presence of somebody else. And that is just in a personal experience, and I feel like lots of other people may agree and some may disagree. But I feel like it's a very similar concept. When I pray, I'm connecting, I'm grounding, I'm speaking, and I feel like it's a very, very similar thing as meditation. So I can see why people might have a bit of, questions on it, because people...
Yeah, because it's a little bit different, and most people associate meditation with other religions.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the conflict comes in. I believe when I pray, personally, and you know me, my upbringing, obviously,
yeah.
And I did my baptism and my communion, all that stuff, and grew up Catholic. But if you had to ask me about the Bible, I know Psalms really well, but I don't know the Bible very well. Although I'm sure I'll recall quite a bit. So I'm not the place to judge what's written in the Bible or any of that. All I can share is my experience with my faith personally. And I've been very blessed to have explored a lot of different faiths. And I found so many similarities. I mean, people say there's differences. I find more similarities
Yeah,
than
100%.
differences. And like they're not opening up a discussion for debate or one's right, one's wrong. But my experience with meditation, I find that if the more I've meditated, I believe the better connection I have with God, purely because I stop the noise in my head. When in the past when I prayed for, because I was scared of surgery or afraid of certain things or had difficult situations, I can honestly say that I could feel the energy in my brain, and a lot of it was me thinking about the problem, me asking, as opposed to when I meditate, I would calm my body, I would detach from the problem, and then whatever I did and spoke was coming from a holistic approach. It was flowing, it was calm, it was, no matter the outcome, I felt peace. Because I knew that regardless whether my prayers were answered or not answered, that was the answer. And I think that's why meditation plays a big part. And I've got a lot of Muslim friends as well. And sometimes life gets very difficult. And the first question I ask them is, are you doing your morning prayers? And 9 times out of 10, Muslims say, I don't have the time, I've been busy. And the moment I said, just get back to that, because I believe subconsciously it's more connection to yourself. It's a calming, it's a detachment from the 3D world into how we should live as opposed to what we are doing.
I feel like I agree with that 100%. And one thing I will touch on when you say like you have a lot of Muslim friends, I would say about probably 80 to 90% of my friends are Muslim. Yeah. And I feel like growing up, and if you're not really introduced to religion, it can be hard, it's difficult, whatever. But for us, I have maybe one other Christian friend in my friend group and 2 other Muslim friends. Every
this
break
is at school, because obviously you've got friends at church and stuff.
Yeah,
like that.
So this is at school. Every break we go into the library, they read their Qur'ans and we read our Bibles. If we have a Bible study group going on, they'll come and they'll join us through the Bible study group. I feel like even though we all have different faiths, I feel like through our friendships, we are actually finding more peace within ourselves because we are feel like that fulfills us in that way. Like it's a very healthy environment, and I feel like it's really weird when people say, like, oh, I don't want to do that around my Muslim friends, or I'm just kind of awkward, or vice versa, when they don't want to build their faith with their friends. Like, it's just,
it's pretty much like we might both be athletes, but you're a CrossFitter and I'm a bodybuilder or a weightlifter. It doesn't mean that we don't share commonalities for a common purpose, and you support me with my journey and I support you with your journey, with the strengths that we learn from our disciplines. That's how I see faith.
Yeah.
You know, I believe that no matter what, one day we may all find out exactly what the go is, but until that point, I think the pursuit of a faith is keeping an open mind and understanding that if the faith you follow is benefit for humanity and the world and mankind, then how can it be bad even though it's different? You know, like if you really want, if it comes from functioning from a place of love with your friends, with your family, with yourself, if your faith's teaching you how to become an honorable person that looks at character, diminishes the ego, releases temptation for the better of humanity, that wants to succeed without putting anybody else down, that wants the best for others as much as for themselves, how can that be bad just because it's different? And that's where I struggle sometimes with what's happening in the world today and how people are functioning. But every time I see young people pursuing faith, I always find that it's such a good thing into self-actualization and self-awareness. But then again, being in the right environment with your faith is a big point of it. And I think that's been a big contributor to you as well, is because you weren't forced into your faith. You've been given the freedom to explore yourself and what's out there. And now you've resonated because of this self-exploration.
Yeah.
Like, would you say that you found your faith because your friends put you onto it? or you found it through self-exploration?
Self-exploration for sure.
Yeah.
I was actually looking into Islam a lot. Like I was reading verses from the Quran, and I had a bunch of friends talking to me about it. And like you said, I've explored it myself. Like I've actually gone and I've taken in the information, and through that I've found out more about myself. And I feel like through the similarities of both religions, I just personally found more peace in my religion.
You found better connection.
Better connection. And I feel like I'm happy to say that my religion that I have chosen was because I have had my experience with it, and I actually have a reason. I don't know if that makes sense. It's confusing.
I know exactly what you're trying to say, and I like that. There was I think it was a Christian singer. This guy's got an amazing voice. His name's Carmen. Have you ever heard of him? You might actually know some of his music. The dude's just exceptional. He sings rock to country to whatever. Like the guy's got a powerful voice, and he even sings a song of where Jesus is in the ring with the devil in a boxing match. And I get goosebumps at the end of that every time, because the devil knocks Jesus out cold, and he rises and beats the shit out the devil. And I still get goosebumps, like I'm getting goosebumps just listening to that song. But I went to one of his concerts, and he said a story. He said, "You all realize you don't have to go to a restaurant to have dinner. You don't have to go to church to be with God."
I agree.
And to have a man of such a strong faith share that was a big awakening for me, because in the past, for me, it was instilled that something that I had to do, and in order to be in God's presence. And the reality is, no, it's somewhere you get, because in a community, you can be in God's presence more powerfully, because there's multiple souls, multiple energies uplifting. So that's the benefit. It's not, yes, there's a lot sacred for a church, no argument there, but you don't need to be at church to find your connection to God.
I agree. I feel like it's a very toxic headspace to be in, when you feel like you need to perform a certain way to be, or to have a relationship with God. And I feel like it's something that people get caught up in a lot nowadays, and especially because of old traditions where it was like, oh, if you don't go to church on Sunday, then you're not actually a Christian, or little things like that. I feel like it defeats the whole purpose of having a relationship with God. If you cannot be okay with being content within yourself and in your religion, it's just there's no point.
But at the same token, you can understand how you have to be disciplined and committed to your faith if you want to grow in it, right? Like, you can't expect to create a connection to God if you never go.
Yeah, no.
You know, and I think that's the one thing that I've realized is, you don't just need to go to church to practice your faith, but going to church while you practice your faith will amplify it.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, and it changes the whole perception of it. Now, and the reason why I'm touching on this is because now in today's society, obviously, religion is a big thing that everyone's talking about, and we see it seems to be going in a very aggressive way, I guess. You know, if I had to, not aggressive, but it's
people have their opinions.
Yeah, very protective of their faith. I don't personally I think in today's society, with the way things are, people are very they hold their faith close to their heart. They're very protective and sometimes, unfortunately, reactive with it. And I find that there's so many young people today dealing with real world problems that we never knew about. It's a completely different world to what we were 20 years ago. Never mind social media, but what's happening in the world. So many kids diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, on the spectrum, and a lot of psychological issues. And I would say that through the generations as parentings, we've lost that home feeling, that sense of security. And you get suicide rates that are going through the roof. People is younger than teenagers, right?
Yeah.
And the way the world is, and it's very hard I don't want to put my foot in. I'll probably get cancelled before I even get started. But the reality is nowadays, I would say that kids might even find it harder to be open about their faith and their journey because of fear of judgment and acceptance because of the way the world is right now. But I still think that there's nothing more important at the moment that kids could be investing in is in pursuing their identity through their faith. Because I think, like you said, would you say that your experience with this journey that you've had of self-exploration in finding your faith has actually helped you in finding a sense of navigation and psychological calmness in dealing with high school exams and life in general? Because more often than not, you find kids would be given medication, antidepressant, stress medication, attention deficit disorder medication to find calmness. But really, if they just pursued themselves and awareness of themselves through a faith that they resonate with, I think it's something that would lead to people in finding more independence in taking ownership of their own internal happiness.
Yeah, 100% it would.
How does this relate, for example, to how you've navigated your relationships with boyfriends, your relationships with us, your parents, and school and friends?
I feel like since I was little, I'm going to go on the friendship aspect of it. Since I was little, I struggled making friends. I had friends, but they all were kind of just mean girls, like rude. Do you know what I mean? Like they weren't really. So I struggled feeling like I fit in a lot. And growing up, I felt like I always had to please people to be part of their friend group, or I felt like I had to seek validation from them in order to be good enough. And I feel like I lived half of my life trying to please other people and seek validation from them when I was not even considering myself about how I was as a person. And I feel like you're very quick to, when you're in that mindset, you're very quick to go against your own morals and beliefs just to please other people. And I feel like certain times, more than not, if I was hurt by someone or upset by someone, I would let it slide, or I would just pretend like it never happened when they pretended like it never happened, because I just wanted to brush over it, and I still wanted to be part of their friend group. And I feel like through my faith and through discovering myself, I've kind of accepted the fact, okay, I forgive you, it's fine, you've hurt me, I am not angry at you, I just do not want you to be my friend anymore. It's just I'm okay being myself, and I'm okay being by myself because I can better myself.
Yeah, you no longer have to change your identity in order not to feel alone.
Exactly, because I feel like I no longer feel like I am alone. I feel like one of the biggest, most important quotes I think I've heard in a long time was, being in your own company is better than being in bad company.
Oh, 100%, unless you are a pain in the ass. But like 100%, but you said a few things that I want to challenge you on. You said, how you had to behave a certain way, and you had to say certain things or behave in a particular way, or do certain things in order to be accepted, or you had to ignore. And you said it in a way that that's what they expected, and I probably agree with that. But I would also challenge the fact that that's what you believed you had to do.
It was.
Because it was coming from a place of a void that you had to fill. You want a sense of belonging, a sense of being wanted, a sense of being important to a certain group. So a lot of times we ourselves perpetuate that, because once we feel like we've done what we need to belong to a certain group, we expect that other people have to go through the same gauntlet, I guess. But then the other aspect is also what we want validation, so we behave a certain way to be validated, because we fear that if we're not ourselves, we won't be.
Yeah.
But here's the thing that I think faith brings in. When God validates every single soul, why do we need validation from anybody else?
I saw this thing that's probably everyone's seen now, but it was like, why seek validation from a world that crucified a perfect man? And I feel like that really helps me. Like, the only thing that I need is to know myself. I need to know myself And I really feel for a lot of people who are going through not knowing what they have going on inside of their head, because it's difficult and it's hard.
It is.
And to navigate certain things in the world without knowing that, I can't imagine it.
No, you can't. But that's where like a lot of kids get depressed and sad. And I mean, this is difficult talk that people don't want to know or listen about. But at the end of the day, you know, the feelings that you go through, which is one thing that I love about the journey, is that the more you go through it, the more you realize, no matter how different another person is, that they've felt the same things.
Yeah.
You know, and no matter who you talk to, I guarantee you they will share very similar feelings and experiences as you, even though their lives are completely different. As souls, that's what we are. It's human nature to want to be this way, to be this way. It's kind of like, you know, Laila, she can't help it when she hears the packets in the kitchen open. She's going to get up and run, right? She can't help but be a dog. And we cannot help but be humans.
Exactly.
And I think it's navigating that beautiful gift that God gave us and understanding that we are not humans. We are a soul before humans. We are not our thoughts. We are not our feelings. Those are experiences that our soul has. And finding that connection to our soul, it's not that we need God, but the way I see it is God is like light, God is energy, God is in everybody. So when we connect to ourselves, we're indirectly connecting to God.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we do not exist without God's energy.
No.
That's my belief. You know, so when I talk about pursuing of ourselves and our own strength, it's actually pursuing God's strength in us. Does that make sense?
It does.
It's not saying I have God-like strength. It's almost like He's given every person a piece of Himself that we can connect to and get and communicate and get the energy we need from Him. You know, and I think that journey would help a lot of kids find that. But I think it also changes. You can then see that the way some mean kids are and the way kids are mean is because they haven't connected to that part of themselves. So when you look at them now, you're no longer looking at them through a victim mentality. You're looking at them through a healed mentality. So as angry or frustrated you might be or slightly disappointed in their behavior, you're actually more compassionate to them. It's kind of like, oh, wow. Like, I feel for you.
Yeah.
And that changes how you respond to them too.
100%.
Because you respond with love. But have you found that in pursuing this, you've responded to yourself better?
In what? Like,
with anything that you might feel that you're disappointed in, thoughts that you have, mistakes that you've made, things that you've done, because you said something about, like, I forgive you for behaving that way, I just don't want to be your friend. But are you able to forgive yourself for the environments you put yourself in? For the decisions you've made when you were in an unaware state of consciousness? Have you forgiven yourself for those things?
I feel like
Yeah, I think that's a very
I
good
feel like,
thing.
yeah, I have.
I think that's awesome, and I believe you, because I think if we don't forgive that part of ourselves, how can we forgive other people for their unconscious behavior towards us?
Exactly.
And forgiveness doesn't mean acceptance. It means acceptance of what's transpired and understanding there's a lesson in it, but it doesn't mean we're going to offer ourselves to the same shit again and again. But forgiveness is letting go. But we can't give that to other people if we haven't given that to ourselves in the first place. Well, dude, look, I really just wanted to sit down with you really briefly and have this discussion. Really well done for your first podcast too, by the way. That was nice and flowy. Is there anything else you'd like to add with your personal experience? Like if there's anyone out there that's trying to find themselves in their faith or dealing with the world, what piece of advice would you give them that would be like the first step for them to take?
I feel like just look. I feel like people nowadays are scared. Everyone's scared. There's a lot going on in the world, and especially as a younger person, it's difficult in a world where you're growing up and people are doing exciting things and you feel like it's kind of like a boring side of the world and you don't really want to look into it. But I feel like just look and you can discover it yourself. I'm not going to say that this is how you need to live and this is what you need to do, but just taking the time and trying, at least trying to discover why you are the way you are and why other people are the way they are will help you understand so much more about your life. I feel like it's easy now to point fingers and to say, oh, you acted this way because you wanted to treat me this way. But actually look into it and have more compassion. People are very angry and it's easy to, like we said, ego. And just to have more compassion, especially as a younger person, because...
Isn't it interesting how we can draw a conclusion of someone's behavior? They do something to us, and we will draw a conclusion in our head as the reason why they did it.
Yep.
We don't know because we're not in their brain, and sometimes they may have done that action just because they were unaware of the consequences. But we put in our minds, you did it because you were this. And we do that without even becoming aware of why we did or why we even responding that way, right? And isn't that just such a blind way to go through life?
It is, 100%.
And it perpetuates itself. So like you said, like do it in a sense of self-exploration. I often tell people, you don't know what your purpose is. You've just found it. Your purpose is to find your purpose.
Exactly.
And this is a really good way to do it.
100%.
Well, thank you, sweetie. I'll definitely have you on way more again. That was fun. I hope you had fun
That
with
was
your old
fun.
man.
Thank you.